by graphing. We hopefully realize that's not an ideal way to solve systems, because if you have a solution where the lines don't intersect a perfect grid line, then we realize we have to figure out the fraction value, right? And that's hard to do. We can't approximate with a graph. So there are other methods, there are other ways to solve systems. And today, the first we're going to learn about is using elimination. Elimination is my favorite method because I feel like it's the most, not the most basic, but I think it makes the most sense. So here are the steps. So you have, remember, a system is at least two equations, right? So we have two equations. They have the same variables, x and y. You want to line up the terms. You want your equations to be written in standard form. So the first thing I want to remind you is, someone tell me what standard form is. What does the standard form of equation look like? The x and the y. Go ahead, Ashton. That's slope-intercept form, Ashton, but that's good. That's good. I want it to be standard form. I want the x and the y on the same side. What does that look like? Good job. I let ax plus by equals c. That's what we want our equations to look like. And once we have two equations that are written in that form, we're going to eliminate one of our variables. And the way that we do that is we look for coefficients. Those are the capital A, B, the numbers attached to the x or the numbers attached to the y. We look for coefficients that are opposites. Sometimes you might have to multiply by a -1 to make that happen. We're going to add the coefficients. We're going to add those two equations together, and you'll see that one of the variables disappears. So let's look at our first example. We're going to solve this system using elimination. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that both equations are written in standard form and that the x's and the y's are stacked right over the top of each other. So I have x's lined up, I have my y's lined up, and then my equal sign, and then my two constants. So are we written in standard form, and are the variable terms lined up? Yeah, they are. Do you see opposite coefficients for the same variable? Which variable has opposite coefficients? Yeah, the +3 and the -3 on the y. Do you guys see this? Whoops. I'm going to just circle these. We have a +3 and a -3 attached to my y. These are opposite coefficients. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a bar underneath this, and we're going to add these two equations together. Now, when I say that we're going to add these two equations together, we're going to add them together like we're combining like terms. What is 4x plus 2x? 6x. Good job. What is a +3y and a -3y? What's +3 and -3? 0. And 0 times y is 0. So that's why they are eliminated. Equals, what is 16 plus 8? 24. Okay, so now how do I get x all by itself? Divide by 6. X equals 4. So remember, with a system, our solution is an xy ordered pair, right? Our solution is an xy ordered pair. So we already know the x coordinate. We have to figure out the y coordinate of our solution. So the next step is to figure out what the y is. So we have to find y. Now, we know that x equals 4. So we can look at either one of these equations. We can look at either equation, and you're going to plug in the value of x equals 4 into one of them and solve for y. So I'm just going to use the top equation. My top equation is 4x plus 3y equals 16. But we already solved and we discovered that x equals 4. So that's really 4 times 4 plus 3y equals 16. And what is 4 times 4? 4 times 4 is 16. 16 plus 3y equals 16. And when I subtract 16 from both sides, 3y equals 0. Divide both sides by what? Which means y equals 0. So that is the solution. 4, 0 is the solution to this system. Okay? 4, 0 is the solution to the system. I want everyone to grab their calculators. We're going to check. We're going to check. And we're going to check using a calculator. I want you to know how to check your solutions, right? So we're going to check using our calculator. So in your calculator, we're going to substitute the x and the y values from our ordered pairs into our equation. So in your calculator, you don't have to go to anything except the calculations, right? We're not doing y equals or anything. And you're just going to take 4 times 4, because our x value is 4, plus 3 times 0. And then hit your equal sign and make sure that it equals 16. Check and make sure that it equals 16. And it does. Okay, so that's the first equation. Remember, if it's a solution to the whole system, it's got to work for... If it's a solution to the whole system, the solution has to work in both what? Both equations, yeah. And we just checked the first one. Let's check the second one. 2 times x, which is 4, minus 3 times 0 equals, what does it say it has to equal? 8. So 2 times 4 minus 3 times 0. Hit equals. What does that equal? 8. So we have the right solution. This is good, and we've checked it. And we checked it using our calculator, okay? Questions about that? Okay, let's move over and try the next one. So remember, first thing you want to do is look and make sure that they're written in standard form. X's over X's, Y's over Y's, constants over constants. Do we have that? We do. Does anyone see opposite coefficients? Meaning the numbers attached to the, which one, Jansen? Yeah, the X's, these are opposites. I have a negative and a nothing, which means it's a positive, right? So we're going to cancel out the X's. We're going to cancel out the X's. So draw a bar underneath it. Put a big old plus sign over here because we're going to add these together. So let's see. Negative X plus positive X is what? It's 0, so we don't even write it. 2y plus 6y is perfect, 8y. And negative 8 plus negative 16 equals negative 24. Good job. Okay, how do I get y all by itself? Divide both sides by 8. Who is that doing the talking over there? Good job, Cameron. Good job. Divide both sides by 8. Y equals negative 3. Y equals negative 3. So remember, our solution to a system is an XY ordered pair. We know that Y is negative 3. We have to figure out what X is. We have to figure out what X is, okay? So we're going to find X, and we know that Y equals negative 3. Do you want to use the first equation or the second equation to plug it in? The first, okay. So I'm going to use that equation. Negative X plus 2Y equals negative 8. I always write it out first, and now I'm going to substitute in negative 3 for Y. So that gives me negative X plus 2 times negative 3 equals negative 8. So let's see, I have negative X. What is 2 times negative 3? Negative 6 equals negative 8. I'm trying to get X all by itself. What do I need to do first? Add 6 to both sides, absolutely. Negative X equals, let's see, negative 8 and positive 6 give me a negative 2. Last step, how do I get that x to become positive? Yeah, divide both sides by negative 1. X equals 2. Okay. So what are we going to do next? Yeah, we're going to check it using our calculator. We're going to check. Okay. So notice that this first equation has a negative in front of my x. You have to make sure that you use the negative symbol, not the minus symbol when you put that into your calculator, okay? So negative, not minus, 2 plus 2 times y is negative 3. And hit your equal sign. Tell me if you get negative 8. So use your calculator. I don't see everybody picking up their calculators. The negative symbol, 2 plus 2 times negative 3. What do we get? What'd you get, Bailey? Negative 8. Okay. What's the next one going to look like? What are we putting into our calculator? Noah, what are we putting in our calculator for the next equation? We're checking that second equation, Noah, right here. X plus 6y equals negative 16. So what are we typing into our calculator? Okay, well, pick up your calculator and work with me, okay? Instead of sitting there. You got it? So what's the value of x? 2 plus the coefficient of y is 6 times, we know that the y value is negative 3, and we're going to hit our equals. What is it supposed to equal? Negative 16. Is that what we got? Seamus, is that what you got? Negative 16? Awesome. So we've checked. This is our solution. We checked it twice. We know that it's good. Okay? Questions? Okay. You're awesome.
Right, I'm gonna head out.
We are good. Thank you so much. I appreciate you covering for me for a second. Okay, let's look at our next example, example number 3. So first thing we want to check is that they're in standard form. X's are stacked up over X's, Y's are stacked up over Y's, constants are over constants. Do we have opposite coefficients? Those aren't coefficients though. I need to get rid of a variable. So that's okay. That's okay. Do you see that one of the variables has the same coefficient? Which variable is that? The y's, yeah. So remember in our steps up top, it said sometimes to get opposites, you have to multiply one of your equations by negative 1. So I always multiply the bottom equation by the negative, so that way I have a positive added to a negative. That's just how my brain works. So we're going to take this equation right here, and we're going to multiply it by negative 1. So I'm going to put times negative 1, and I'm going to rewrite the whole thing. And there's a reason behind that, because eventually you're going to have to multiply both equations. So we're not changing this equation at all, so I'm just going to rewrite it. 4x plus 3y equals 2. The second equation, every single term in it is getting multiplied by negative 1. So negative 1 times 5x is negative 5x. Negative 1 times 3y is negative 3y. A negative 1 times a negative 2 becomes a positive 2. And now when I add these two equations together, 4x minus 5x gives me negative 1x. A positive 3y and a negative 3y canceled, eliminated, equals 2 plus 2 is 4. I have to get rid of that negative sign out in front of my x. Divide both sides by negative 1. So x equals negative 4. So every single time I'm going to do this, I'm going to remind you that every solution to a system is an x-y ordered pair. So I only know that x is negative 4. I still have to find y. I have to find y. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find y, and I'm going to do that knowing that x equals -4. Do you want to plug that x equals -4 into the first equation or the second? And we're going to use the originals, not the ones that we multiplied. Do you want to put it into the first one or the second one? Your choice. Matthew, what do you want to do? First one or second one? First one. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it. 4x plus 3y equals 2. 4 times x is now going to be -4 plus 3y equals 2. What is 4 times -4? -16 plus 3y equals 2. What do I need to do next? Add 16 to both sides. 3y equals 18. Lastly, divide both sides by, and I find out that y equals, so that's the other part of my ordered pair. That's the other part of my ordered pair. I need to check this, right? I need to check this. So when I check it, I'm going to take my first equation, 4x plus 3y. So I'm going to do 4 times -4 in my calculator plus 3 times 6, because that's the value of y. And what is it supposed to equal? What does my first equation come out to equaling? It equals +2. You need to check and make sure that that equals +2. Okay. What do we get? What's 4 times -4? -16. Plus 3 times 6 is 18. -6 plus 18 should give me 2. Did you get that in your calculator? That's what you should get. Let's check the second one. 5 times my x value of -4 plus 3 times 6. Put that into your calculator. What's our solution? -2, and that's what we're supposed to get, okay? How do we feel about that? Good? Okay. So let's look at example number 4. There's a problem with it. What's the problem with example number 4? What do you see, Tiana? That equals is in the wrong spot, right? What else? What two variable terms are supposed to be on the left side? The x and the y are both supposed to be on the left. Are they? So I have to take that -2y and I have to move it to the other side. I have to take that -2y and I have to move it to the other side. How am I going to do that? Where's your note packet? Say again. So is it not in your bag now? Get it out. No. You should have had that out already, right? Yeah. Let's make that happen. So I'm going to add 2y to both sides. I need to add 2y to both sides on that bottom equation. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add 2y. Add 2y. So that bottom equation becomes 8x plus 2y equals 2. And the top equation, I'm now putting below it, 10x plus 2y equals -2. What do we need to do now? Can we add them? I have to multiply by -1. Which equation do you want to multiply by -1? Top or bottom? Bottom one. Okay, so I'm going to multiply this by -1 every single term. So the first one, I'm going to rewrite 8x plus 2y equals 2. That first equation does not change. The second one, -10x minus 2y equals +2. Now it looks like I have opposite y coefficients, and so I can add these two equations together. 8x minus 10x, or 8x plus a -10, gives me a -2x. Positive 2y and -2y cancel out. They're eliminated. 2 plus 2 is 4. What do you want to do next, Aiden?
Divide by negative 2.
Yeah, divide both sides by -2. X equals -2. X equals -2. So again, every solution to a system is an XY ordered pair. We know that X is -2. We have to find the Y coordinate. So we're going to find Y. And we know that X equals -2. We're going to find Y, and we know that X equals -2. So I'm just going to put it into this top equation. 10x plus 2y equals -2. I'm going to replace the x with what number? What does x equal? -2. So that becomes 10 times -2 plus 2y equals -2. 10 times -2 is -20 plus 2y equals -2. What am I going to do next? I'm trying to solve for y, finding y. Add 20 to both sides. Add 20 to both sides. 2y equals, let's see, -2 and a +20 give me a +18. Divide both sides by 2. Y equals 9. Y equals 9. All right, so when we do the check in our calculator, the first one's going to be pretty basic, right? You're going to do 10 times -2 plus 2 times y is 9. 10 times -2 plus 2 times 9. What do we get? 10 times -2 plus 2 times 9. What do you get when you do the check? Say it loudly. You get 2 or -2? -2. That's what you're supposed to get. For the second one, since this equation is all messed up, I have to use this one to do my check. So 8 times -2 plus 2 times 9. And we're looking for a +2 as our answer. Is that what we get? Yes, we do. Okay. Number 5. Number 5. Number 5 is all sorts of messed up. What do we have going on there? Yeah, neither one of them are in order, right? Do you guys realize that when you need to take something from one side of the equal sign and move it to the other side, it becomes the opposite, right? And if I need to take this +12 from the left side and I move it to the right side, it becomes the opposite. So using that concept, the first equation becomes -6x. The opposite of a +10y is a -10y. And it equals, I've moved that 12 to the other side, so the opposite of a +12 is -12. We're going to do the same thing. I need to move this 5x to the opposite side. So I have to use the opposite. And I have to move the 10 to the opposite side. So it's going to become the opposite sign. So I want the x to come first. So what is the opposite of a 5x? So I'm moving it to the left. What's the opposite of a positive 5x? Negative 5x. The negative 10y stays right there. Negative 10y equals, this positive 10 moves across the equal sign, so it becomes its opposite, which is negative 10. I want you to know that movement, right? I want you to know that so you don't have to add something to both sides, subtract something from both sides. I want it to be quick for you. Do we have opposite coefficients, or can we make opposite coefficients? Jansen, what are you going to do? Which one do you want to multiply? The bottom one by negative 1. Good job. So the first one does not change, stays the same. Negative 6x minus 10y equals negative 12. The second equation, negative 1 times negative 5x, gives me a positive 5x. Negative 1 times negative 10y gives me a positive 10y. And negative 1 times negative 10 gives me a positive 10. Now I'm going to add these two equations together. Negative 6x and positive 5y give me a negative x. Positive 10y, negative 10y cancel out. They're eliminated. Equals negative 12 plus 10 is negative 2. Yeah. What do I need to do? Almost there. Divide both sides by negative 1. So x equals 2. X equals 2. So we know that in a system, our solution is an XY ordered pair. And we know that X is 2. We need to find Y. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to find Y. And we know that X equals 2. What equation do you want to use? The top one? Okay, so my top equation is negative 6x plus 12 equals 10y. That's my top equation. So I'm going to replace my x with a 2. Negative 6 times 2 plus 12 equals 10y. What is negative 6 times 2? Negative 12. Negative 12 plus 12. Negative 12 plus 12 is 0. So I really have 0 equals 10y. 0 equals 10y. What do I do? Well, I can divide both sides by 10 to get y all by itself, but 0 divided by anything is still 0. So the y coordinate of my solution is 0. The y coordinate is 0. Okay? We're not going to check that one. I feel like we've checked it enough that you guys know how to do the check with the calculator. Yes? Okay. Are we good to move on to the next page? Yeah? Okay. I have a number 6 and I have a word problem. Number 6. Using that idea of moving something to the other side requires you to change the sign, make it the opposite. Knowing that we don't have to do anything to the first equation, I'm going to leave that the same. 3x plus 2y equals 8. What do you want to do to the second equation? Someone walk me through it. What do I need to move on the second equation? Yeah, I'm going to take this negative 5x and I have to move it over here. So it's going to become the opposite. And the opposite of a negative 5x is a positive 5x. 5x plus 2y equals 12. One of these equations need to get multiplied so I have opposite coefficients. Which one do you want to change? The bottom one. Okay. So I'm going to multiply this whole thing by negative 1. Top equation stays the same. 3x plus 2y equals 8. A negative times 5x gives me a negative 5x. A negative times 2y gives me a negative 2y. And a negative times 12 gives me negative 12. Positive 3 and negative 5 give me negative 2x. Negative 2x equals negative 4. Last step. Divide both sides by negative 2. And I find out that x equals a positive 2. X equals positive 2. So in my xy ordered pair, I know that x is positive 2. I have to find the y, so I'm going to write that down. I need to find y. And I know that x equals 2. That's just how I know what to plug into my equation. So I'm going to use this equation, 3x plus 2y equals 8. And I'm going to replace my x with the number. I'm going to replace my x with the number 2. Yeah, good job. 3 times 2 plus 2y equals 8. What is 3 times 2? 6. So 6 plus 2y equals 8. I think we need to subtract 6 from both sides. So 2y equals 2, which means that y equals, y equals 1. So the solution is the ordered pair 2, 1. The solution is the ordered pair 2, 1. Okay. Everybody good? We can do that word problem, or you need this up for a second? Raise your hand if you need me to hold this for a second. Okay. Word problems are our struggle. Word problems are our struggle, okay? So Darlene is making a quilt that has alternating stripes of regular quilting fabric and sateen fabric. So just two types of fabrics, okay? She spends $76 on the total of 16 yards of the two fabrics. It says which system of equations can be used to find the amount X in yards of regular quilting fabric and the amount Y in yards of sateen fabric. So it's telling us what our variables are. It's telling us that X is yards of the regular fabric and Y is yards of the sateen fabric. We have to define our variables. We have to define our variables because in Delta Math and on your state EOC, they have drop downs just like the Delta Math does. You have to choose the right one, okay? We're trying to figure out the amount of yards, the amount, like the cost of the yard. So let's figure out, first of all, what did we do? She spent how much money? How much money did she spend? She spent $76. So that means however many yards of the first regular fabric plus however many yards of the sateen fabric cost $76. Okay. What about how many yards did she purchase altogether? 16. She purchased 16 yards. That means the number of yards of the regular fabric plus the number of yards of the sateen fabric equal 16. So how are we going to solve this? Because this is the system that we're going to use. How are we going to solve this? Do you want to get rid of your X's or your Y's? You're going to get rid of both. This is not right. Does it say one can be used to find? This is a bad question. Skip, 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 skip. This is a bad question. Because if we multiply by -1, what are we going to do? If we multiply this bottom equation by -1, we're going to cancel out everything. It's a bad question. This is a bad question. You can't do that one. Bad, bad. Okay, so we're done. We're done with our notes.